In at number 5 we have SCP-1048. Imagine your childhood teddy. Cute, right? Now imagine if it could move around and communicate through little gestures. Might sound a little creepy, but it could also be your childhood dream. Well, that is what SCP-1048 is. It's a sentient teddy bear that looks as ordinary as any other teddy. It can move around, dance, jump in place, and give hugs. Of course, it was only observed to give little hugs to the SCP staff's lower legs because of its small stature, but adorable nonetheless. And I know what you are thinking, all of this sounds very endearing. Allegedly, in 2 separate events, 1048 drew pictures for janitorial staff just like a small child would. As you would imagine, the affection 1048 gives is received positively by pretty much everyone at the Foundation. When it comes to more advanced or direct communication with 1048, the Foundation has not yet been successful. While the teddy-like SCP can give a yes or no in vague gestures, anything more complex than that isn't met with anything helpful. Does this teddy not want to talk, or does it have intelligence about on par with a toddler? That is yet to be discerned. Staff tried to get it to use its art to try and communicate, but for whatever reason it didn't work. So while we don't know where this SCP comes from or who or what they are, 1048 has not appeared to be a threat. Because of that, it was allowed to roam the facility freely. Unfortunately, the location of the little teddy is no longer known, so protocol states if you see 1048 wandering around, secure it for containment. If you see some art 1048 left behind, eradicate it unless a future protocol change stipulates otherwise. No teddies are allowed in the facility until 1048 is found. If you see anything that looks like this one, report it immediately.
Coming in at number 4 we have SCP-990. 990 is a human male dressed in a Cold War era business suit who appears to Foundation personnel through dreams. Thus far, no Foundation personnel have encountered 990 in the real world, thus making containment near impossible and allowing 990 to roam freely. It has been appearing to Foundation personnel since an expunged date. Its existence came to light when several agents discussed having dreams involving a similar individual. Numerous other agents reported dream sightings of an individual matching the description of 990. Foundation personnel are considered free to converse with 990 if he should appear to them, and are encouraged to try to obtain information from the subject regarding himself. Though currently no containment for 990 has been devised, any personnel with suggestions for the containment should report to the Foundation doctor. Any and all ideas are welcome, regardless of who suggests them. Coming in at number 3, SCP-343. SCP-343 is said to be a male, seemingly raceless, humanoid colloquially nicknamed God, who seems to possess omnipotence. 343 was discovered walking the streets of Prague, and was detained after a staff member witnessed him disappear from the streets and reappear on a rooftop. Now I'm cheating a little bit with this one, considering that 343 didn't necessarily breach containment, but does come and go as he pleases. So let me have this. Containment is impossible, therefore he is consistently breaching the Foundation perimeters. During the Foundation's first talk with 343, he claimed outright to be the creator of the universe, which is a weird flex, but okay. When asked to prove this, he laughed, walked through the wall of a chamber, and returned second later with a hamburger in his hand. Honestly, the dream. When personnel returned for their second visit, the previously bare cell had been furnished in upscale Old English style, completed with a roaring fireplace, and seemed many times larger than it did from the exterior. 343 is said to enjoy speaking with people and seems to have a knowledge of all topics. Visiting 343 has even become a daily event for many of the staff members, and all employees report feeling generally happier after each visit. Coming in at number 2, SCP-1048. SCP-1048 is a small teddy bear that is capable of moving of its own accord, and can communicate through a small range of gestures. It is reported that the bear will often show affection to individuals in ways found endearing by most people. This is often displayed through a hug to the lower leg, dancing, jumping in place, and in 2 separate events, it has even drawn childlike pictures for janitorial staff. Attempts at direct communication with 1048 have not been considered successful, though it is capable of simple gestures to indicate yes or no. The more anomalous behavior of 1048 was not observed until 7 months after it was originally secured by the Foundation, with it being said to construct crude replicas of itself using various materials. Currently there are 3 known creations of 1048, designated 1048A, 1048B, and 1048C. The nature of these creations has been in stark contrast to 1048's behavior, behaviour, as all have exhibited extreme violence towards humans. Now, the 3 replicas of 1048 are rather disturbing, with 1048A being made out of human ears, B having what appears to be a hand and arm of a human poking out, and finally C being composed entirely of rusted metal scraps. Now, 1048 has since breached containment, with its whereabouts being unknown. However, it is believed to be wandering around Site 24. If found, 1048 should be secured for containment, but any further creation of 1048 should be destroyed on site, unless further evidence warrants less extreme action. To quote the Foundation doctor, Dr. Carver, "This is not a joke. We have no idea what SCP-1048's full capabilities are. Who knows how many of the damn things are out there by now." And finally, coming in at number 1, we have SCP-226-D. SCP-226 appears to be a sentient statue of Varanus Commodonius, also known as Komodo Dragon. It is said to be constructed of solid obsidian, with trace amounts of an unknown metal alloy. According to Foundation reports, 226 was found in a small town, where it was brought to the attention of the Foundation through rumours and the high rate of missing cats. When 226 is in its room, it will not leave or even attempt to do so at any given time. The subject, who is said to refer to himself as Rico, is generally talkative, holding long conversations with those who come to feed or clean it, and will aimlessly wander through the room. It is said that the subject speaks through 3 small holes in its head, located at the top of its snout. They are shaped similar to those found on a common woodwind instrument such as flute or ocarina. Personnel are constantly reminded that blowing into these holes will cause 226 to feel pain and may even enrage it. I mean, it would certainly enrage me, that's for sure. Now, it is said that 226 is almost completely harmless when it is contained within the replicated room, but when outside of it supposedly displays the ability to manipulate local time to a sharp degree, but is limited to reversing time up until the point where it exited the room. Now, it is said that 226 breached containment but was ultimately destroyed by a doctor and professor during target practice, during which time the subject wandered out onto the firing range.
Kicking off at number 5, Site 120. A containment breach in the fantastically written short story Until Death, which exclusively features the terrifying SCP-106, aka the Old Man, the horrifying creature that crawls through walls in its own mucus-filled pocket dimension, hunting and stalking its prey so it can consume them into its void. The thing is, pretty much any event surrounding SCP-106 has been classed as a devastating containment breach, and the Foundation are kind of sick and tired with having to deal with it. You can't exactly contain this nightmarish slug. It hunts on its own accord. Not a lot you can do, really. Well, in the events of Until Death, flip that whole thing on its head and then some. Usually 106 has a propensity to hunt young humanoids between the age group of 10 and 25, but in this instance, the Old Man had someone else on the menu. For those of you that haven't read it, we'll leave a link in the comment box down below, but essentially, Until Death details an aging female Foundation researcher working late at night at Site 120, and wow, 106 kind of wants to meet back up with his void-ridden wife, Anna, who maybe is his wife. If not, that's really messed up. It's pretty gross and horrifying, but it's also really, really sad.
In at number 4, we have 1440. This containment failure is less cuddly than the last one, but it is another SCP that doesn't have a scary appearance, only scary effects. 1440 is just a man. The Foundation doesn't know his ethnicity, age, name, or where he came from. When anyone has tried to ask, he won't answer. Could be because he is refusing to disclose any personal information. On the other hand, he himself may not know the answer to any of these questions. Looking at him, he looks like he is in his 80s, but he hasn't aged a bit since the Foundation first spotted him. The anomalies don't stop there. If 1440 stays around humans or man-made objects for more than a few days, destruction somehow occurs. Foundation personnel have documented it as an acute adverse effect on everything connected to humanity. The destruction of said people or items will increase in tandem with the amount of time spent near 1440. Whatever event causes this is unknown, but prolonged exposure to 1440 will lead to the death and or eradication. SCP-1440 and its possessions are safe from this, but we don't know why. If you're curious, it carries a sack, a pack of playing cards that have been worn down from use, and a glass cup. A small mercy is that 1440 tries to avoid human populations, likely because it is aware of what happens when it comes near them. Oddly though, 1440 travels in a complex pattern for an unknown reason. This pattern leads it to humans again, and we still don't know enough about the pattern to warn them. As I said before, 1440 isn't helpful with information, but it isn't actively hostile, lifestyle and complies with containment. Due to this adverse effects it has on humanity, any attempts to contain it have failed and led to many fatalities. It's currently uncontained, out there roaming around. Protocol calls for surveillance and a focus on learning more about its travel pattern in hopes of warning civilians that may end up in its path. Containment is not a priority until the Foundation is not at risk of losing resources and personnel. So maybe if you see an old man avoiding you, best to let him be. In at number 3 we have SCP-3445. We can find this next SCP in Colorado, or we could until it disappeared. 3445 was located in Peak Cemetery near Aurora in Colorado. Why a cemetery? Well, this SCP is an unmarked gravestone with some unique qualities. It's quite large, about 2 meters tall, and the state of wear and tear leads Foundation staff to believe it was made in the late 30s or early 40s. There are 4 openings at the top of it and it has no markings, with the exception of a symbol that looks like a $sign carved in its center. My mind goes to this being a stone slots machine, but that is not the case. If you put the money in one of the openings up top, specifically $1 or $5 bill, the bill vanishes. 5 minutes later, a small note card will appear in the same spot. Personnel have not disclosed what is on the note card, if anything. Due to it being a gravestone, 3445 was contained on site. The guards placed on duty disguised themselves as local groundskeepers and were set to work 24/7. They are now believed to be dead and 3445 is missing. The Foundation is now searching for the missing SCP. If spotted, report immediately and do not interact. You'll just lose money anyways. In at number 2 we have SCP-096. This SCP recently is a high priority to contain after it escaped. It's 2.38 meters tall or 7 feet 8 inches tall. It's a humanoid figure. It's pale, hairless and thin to the point its skin stretches across its body. Save for its arms and jaws, 096 is fairly proportionate. Its arms are nearly 5 feet long and its jaw is 4 times as big as the average person. And that's not all that's off about the face of this SCP. The eyes have no color. It's as if the white of the eye never ends. There is no pigment there at all, no iris, no pupil, all white. That being said, the Foundation has not confirmed if 096 is blind. As for intelligence, the Foundation noted it does not show any higher brain functions beyond locating its victims. When this SCP was contained, it spent the most of its days pacing. It favored the eastern wall of its containment chamber. The reason for this was not specified. If any individual sees the face of 096, it immediately becomes unfathomably distressed. It will try and hide its face with its hands while its screams and cries pierce through the air. This will continue for a minute or two before it stands and runs right for the individual that caught a glimpse. I must be clear that nothing, absolutely nothing can or will stand in this SCP's way. Any impediments to 096's path will be gotten through at any means necessary. Notes are not clear about how that happens or if it gets to victims through destructive means. Whatever the case, once 096 gets to its target, they are eradicated, and 096 always gets to its target. It is assumed 096 eats its victims due to the lack of remains. After this, it becomes docile once again and will try to return to its natural habitat. Where the habitat is has not been documented or shared, most likely for the safety of those curious enough to try and find it without Foundation resources. The last time someone saw its face in containment, they left the facility. Soon after, 096 left the facility in search of its victim and has caused many fatalities ever since. The Foundation lists the containment of this SCP as high priority. And finally, in at number 1 we have SCP-049. The Foundation was investigating disappearances in Montauban, France, where they found 049. At first glance, it seems 049 dresses like a medieval plague doctor, but since then the Foundation has observed that these garments have grown from 049's body over time. When he was found in France, he was surrounded by people he had turned into SCP-049-2. This classification is given to victims of 049's experiments, as they are essentially reanimated corpses. 049 watched and took notes as the Foundation exterminated the zombie-like people around him, and then he surrendered. While in Foundation custody, 049 was provided with mammals to experiment on to keep him calm as a means of compromise. He was very cooperative for a time. During his stay, Dr. Raymond Ham spent a lot of time interviewing and studying 049. Ham considered him a friend, but in April of 2017, 049 became agitated and attacked Dr. Ham during an interview. Security was not alerted and Ham was turned into 0492 within 3 hours. Due to this, 049 has been flagged fact as a higher risk than before, and any evidence of cooperation is questioned. 049 fled facility grounds during a mass containment breach. Documents allege that 049 came across 353 during the breach and the two fell in love and escaped during the chaos. Like 049, SCP-353 is considered highly dangerous. Attempts to contain either or both SCPs have failed so far and had many casualties, but the Foundation will continue to try.
Coming in at number 5 we have SCP-920. SCP-920 appears to be an Asian male with the inability to control its own movements, and will instead wander about, being unable to choose a destination. Due to this, transportation, movement, or direction of 920 to a certain destination is physically impossible. Attempts at transporting 920 to any destination will result in transporters becoming lost. Attempts at directing 920 will result in 920 becoming lost. 920 also seems to have a slight psychic pull, causing subjects that come in contact with it to feel a compulsion to walk and talk with him. Now, saying that is not recommended, as typically subjects will follow 920 and in turn become lost. On top of that, 920 does not appear to have a normal human requirement and can wander through deserts, tundras, and oceans without encountering difficulties. As of right now, 920's movements are being followed by satellite observation. Tracking of 920 by land or air has been discontinued.
Next up at number 4, Incident 0961A. And although it was a devastating incident, it was also a pretty ingenious means to an end and potentially resulted in the actual extermination of SCP-096, aka the Shy Guy. If you don't know anything about 096, make sure to check out our Monster Files video where we go through the basics of this terrifying anomalous entity. For the most part, 1A is just a great read and a demonstration of why the Foundation's documentary style is so compelling. But what it does is essentially tells a story of Dr. Dan and his master plan to get the Foundation's O5 Council to finally recognise the true impending danger that 096 poses. The thing is, because 096 is triggered by an individual viewing it, either consciously or unconsciously, Dr. Dan was aware that the Shy Guy could potentially result in an XK class extinction event with the entire world exposed to the image of 096 and thus triggering a literal hungry hippo hoedown of death and destruction. So Dr. Dan conspired to sabotage one of 096's many containment breaches, resulting in an event that killed numerous civilians to finally prove how much danger it posed to the unwitting public. People died, but it kind of worked, and so Dr. Dan's punishment was to be the one to kill SCP-096 himself. I wonder if he looked it in the eye when he pulled the trigger. Coming in at number 3, SCP-1337. Recently we were asked the question which SCP would make the best horror film, and well, SCP-1337 is a pretty terrifying contender. Originally 1337 was a relatively harmless ghost, class safe as a level 2 humanoid apparition in the form of a young woman named Mary Tallish, who was abducted, ritually tortured and murdered on May 19th, 1952 in Muncie, Indiana. On the 19th day of every month, 1337 would walk along the road where she was killed, flag down any passing car, and asked to be taken back to its home, which turned out to be a gravestone where it would disappear. Sadly. Turned out during one devastating incident, an arrogant Foundation doctor tasked with leading 1337's research decided it would be a good idea to destroy her gravestone, thinking that it would lead to him being promoted. Well, during this particular containment breach, what it actually did was serve to turn a harmless, safe class entity into a Euclid, free-roaming, actively aggressive corporeal wraith. That's never a good idea. And an entity that now the Foundation is absolutely terrified of. So much so that it actively hunted down the offending doctor, gouged out their eye sockets, and then ripped out their heart. Yeah, good end. Swinging in at number 2, SCP-1730. Whew. Now, if you've got a spare several hours, then the access file for SCP-1730 is definitely a worthy, horrifying read, although there are many oftentimes confusing moving parts. When they're fully realised though, 1730 is one of the most compelling yet skin-crawling demonstrations of what happens when things go really, really wrong within the Foundation, or well, an alternate reality version of the Foundation. Yeah. Don't say I didn't warn you. The basic components of 1730 are that it's a Foundation compound known as Site-13, originally located near Nome, Alaska. The actual origin of exactly what it was containing is otherwise unknown due to the fact that the site's leading director, Elliot Emerson, was actually disposing of many of its anomalous humanoid entities into some weird body pit that incinerated them and turned their remains into a mass gelatinous liquid anomaly. Of course, in one of the most disturbing containment breaches in the Foundation's alternate reality history, this terrifying liquid ooze infected the whole of Site-13, and so it was sealed away, doors locked, no one can ever go in, let's just hope it holds and forget about it. Although SCP-1730 kind of gives us more questions than answers, it's still utterly terrifying nonetheless. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, Incident 239. Holy moly, where do we even begin? Now, don't get me wrong, the reason that the SCP Foundation is so damn captivating is because of the intricacies of its content, which oftentimes spans an absolutely colossal amount of work. This one in particular, Incident 239B, features so many renowned characters and entities that it's one hell of a season finale. Essentially, there are several research professors in the Foundation's influence: Dr. Gears, Dr. Kondraki, the curious Dr. Bright, and Dr. Clef, who may or may not be Satan, or the snake at the Garden of Eden, or just some kind of reality-bending anomalous trickster. Well, essentially, in the events of Incident 239B, Dr. Clef had a bone to pick with SCP-239, also known as the Witch Child, a reality-bending entity that may or not be the creator of the universe as we know it, the Judeo-Christian god, or both of them rolled into one. Dr. Clef saw the anomalous powers of 239 as the greatest threat to existence, and so breached the Foundation himself in one of the most destructive and calamitous events in Foundation history. Honestly, the events of Incident 239B are so damn insane that it's difficult to keep your head, but it proves to be perhaps the most eventful containment breach on record.